Today I'm going to be talking about communication and speaking skills, answering questions, giving information. I often get distracted and end up talking about something different from what I planned, but today my intention, unless you all direct me elsewhere or ask other types of questions, is to talk about the power of communication and speaking skills as I ramp up to do a small group speaking training starting next Monday. So, I'll be talking about speaking skills today, and in particular, talk about the things that I think come up the most often for people around speaking. Why speaking skills are super important, why all communication skills are super important, and some of the ways that I'd love for you to benefit from my speaking skills training, regardless of whether you take my training or not. So I use my TikTok live time to give value, hopefully, to give you something that can make a difference in your communication, in your speaking. So feel free to ask any questions. Questions are always really helpful for me in terms of shaping the content so that it can be most useful for whoever is here. If you don't ask questions, then I'll just try to improvise and talk about whatever comes up. My name's Lisa Lacroix, and I'm primarily a speaking skills coach. I work largely with women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s to help them find their story so that they can show up in the world, take up space, and talk about what they know and what they've come through. This is also applicable for anyone with any kind of marginalized identity, because ours are the stories, women and people with any kind of marginalized identity. Ours are the stories that need more airspace, that need more attention. Ours are the stories that when we tell them, even though it's sometimes scary, can change the expectations that we have for ourselves and for each other in the world. It's my commitment to help you, and also for myself, to continuously level up in bringing myself forward, in taking up space, in saying what's true. I believe that everyone has a story to tell, and that in telling it, you could change someone's life. That someone might hear your story and feel affirmed, feel like they're not alone, or be encouraged to talk about their own unique experience. So much of the time, many of us are habituated in consuming, especially now, consuming content and scrolling and reading, and it's really easy to do, so there's a dopamine rush that comes with it, and it's easy for us to get stuck in that. But it's my belief that the way we shape the world around us is when we create anything. That could mean creating music or creating written content. It could mean creating children or creating a community, or it can mean creating stories, storytelling, and creating content. So to whatever degree you're consuming, I would invite you to see where you could also create and contribute. So many times people tell me that they don't like the sound of their voice. And a lot of times not liking the sound of your voice can come from, one, the fact that we're used to hearing our voices filtered through our own heads. Let's see, I usually try to read everybody's comments as long as they're reasonably respectful. And so if you're here, I consider that this is a live and I'm the host and you're my guests, and what you bring to the party is meaningful. And so if you can bring something that's lovely, beautiful, supportive, thought-provoking in any kind of positive way, then you are welcome to be here, and I welcome your comments. Min3M says, I love cougars. Hey, what's not to love, right? Rowan Springfield, off topic, your smile's gorgeous. Thank you, Rowan. I appreciate that. I did a video not too long ago when someone complimented me in one of my lives, and I deflected it, and I was talking about the fact that it's so easy for us to deflect compliments. So instead, I'm just going to say thank you so much. I'm going to take that as a gift. So Anthony Baca says, do I need to expand, learn new words to articulate myself to others? Well, I don't know you personally, Anthony, but I'm a big believer in increasing our range in all the ways, increasing our capacity for all things. And so to whatever degree we can increase our capacity and our language, for sure it's going to add to our ability to be articulate. So it certainly can't hurt. It's not necessarily true that you need to increase your vocabulary. In fact, some people will say that the most effective speakers are the ones who keep the language level at about a grade 3 or grade 4 level. A lot of times if we're people who have a big vocabulary, we love words. Like, I'm someone who loves words, and I can get really deeply into the nuance of words. And sometimes that can lose people. So I would say that you don't necessarily need to increase your vocabulary, but as somebody who loves words, I think it's always a nice thing to do. Let me see if there's something else that I can share with you that could be useful. Does anybody have any queries or challenges? Here are some of the people who I serve and who I think can benefit from speaking skills. Anybody who creates social media content and who needs some support in getting themselves on camera. A lot of times people are either afraid to create social media content because they're afraid of being on camera or because they don't know what to share. Or they're creating social media content, but they're not using themselves because they would rather, they're a little bit nervous or they are afraid to show up fully as themselves. I personally believe that human beings want that kind of connection with other human beings. And so we often relate more intimately with people, or we feel that we know them more when we have words and an image to connect, when we see them on video. I'm hearing over and over again all the time, because I follow a lot about social media and where the world is going, that increasingly video is going to be super, super important. I mean, we've all seen what YouTube has done in the world, and it's not going away. Being on video is not going away because we're in the attention economy, and sometimes when you are willing to show up as a human being, as a full human being, with all of yourself, your words, your image, your voice, you can create that much more connection with people. I've increasingly been getting requests from people to talk about leadership, and especially for women. And I would say, again, it's also for people with marginalized identities or people who are young, find themselves on a career path where they're not confident about how to bring themselves forward and assert what they want and what they need in a way that feels positive and can be received by people. The last 2 days, I've had people asking questions like, how do I deal with a boss who seems to want to undermine my authority, or a boss who is trying to take me down a few notches? And what that speaks to is the fact that there are particular communication skills that we can develop over time where we can be effective, where we can both communicate what's true in an honest way, but also do it in a way that has compassion and warmth and that can be received by people. And I think that's a really important skill that many of us have not been taught. I did a video not too long ago about how do we say no or create a boundary in a way that doesn't feel like a negative. It doesn't feel like it's putting someone down. It doesn't feel like it's shutting them out, but rather has love and compassion combined with it. Because I personally believe that we need love and compassion as the center for everything, as a starting point for everything that we do. And then if we can have love and compassion and understanding as the base, then we can bring what's really true for us. Sometimes we throw out being true to ourselves in the name of wanting to be positive. And that kind of bypassing of our own truth is not going to land us in a position of power going forward. And I want power. I want empowerment for you all. I believe that how to find that positivity and that love and that contribution while also being absolutely meticulously honoring of our own truth is super important. Can you kindly explain more about the 5 weeks program? Pure Falcon says. Yeah, it's called Speak for Yourself, and it's effectively a speaking skills training. It's 1.5 hours per week on Mondays from 10:30 to noon Pacific Standard Time. It will be on Zoom in a small group with coaching. The speaking skills tools that I offer are largely informed from my background as a film and television actor, so very influenced by skills that we use in acting and in film and TV, and also informed by the masculine and feminine relational polarity training that I'm involved with. So we touched a little bit yesterday on the difference between speaking in the masculine and speaking in the feminine, and I have most of a unit dedicated to understanding and practicing that. There's definitely part of a unit on landing the period, because so many of us tend to speak without even being conscious of it, where we're thinking out loud and going on a little bit longer than maybe we need to, and wanting to fill in all the gaps and talk about what the the parenthetical pieces or the opposite. This is the way that I tend to speak if I'm left to my own devices. As a verbal processor, I'll speak in the feminine and speak in circles and think out loud, and it's very creative. And then I'll think of something else that I want you to know too, because I want to give it all to you, instead of trusting that all I need to say is the first point and I can stop. And I call that landing the period. We'll definitely be dealing with pause because it's one of the most important speaking skills. We'll be dealing with reducing and eliminating empty words and all the types of empty words that you might not even think are empty words, so that we can become more concise. We'll be doing practices on all of those things. Hi, Louie. Nice to see you. Thanks for being here. So that's a little bit about Speak for Yourself, the course that begins on Monday. It is at lisalacroix.com/speaking. There's more information there. If you can't make that particular course or those particular dates, you can sign up to be on the mailing list, and I'll let you know either when it is available as an online course or if I decide to do it again. We're talking about speaking skills today, communication skills. Your questions are welcome if you want to ask a question or take the conversation in a different direction. I'm always wanting to ask myself and for other people to ask themselves, what is that top level, I call it a superpower, that is core to who you are, that is the expression of who you are, that will show up anywhere. And on my podcast, I define a superpower as that skill set or strength that has been with you your entire life, regardless of the age or the stage, regardless of the work that you're doing, regardless of the time in your life, that in one form or another has always been there. And for me, I can look back at every stage of my life, everything I have ever done, and it always comes down to connection and communication. It comes down to my superpower of bringing ideas together, because I love to synthesize ideas, part of my ADHD-like brain, and bringing people together. So connection, communication, growth, those kind of things. So there's something that's your superpower, that's your top level lily pad, and all the other things fit in one way or another. And so when we look back on our lives, we have a perspective that we don't have going forward. And communication is one of the key and core things for me. So it doesn't matter whether I have been, focusing on dance, where communication is key, partner dance. If I've been involved in masculine, feminine, relational, and sexual polarity work, communication and connection are key. If I'm working on speaking skills and how to help other people improve their ability to share their story in an effective way, that's about communication and connection. When I was an actor, that's about communication and connection with your partner, with the scene, with the words. When I had my podcast, it was about communication and connection. How to highlight the voices of other people so that their stories can be communicated to the world. Chances are that you also have a top level thing in your life, and that no matter what you do, no matter what new project or career or job or path you take, there's probably something relevant to that top level piece or to your superpower that's going to show up in that new endeavor. And that's why I say we should all follow our desires. And then the more we can start from a place of self-awareness, know who we are, know what we value, know what our strengths are, and then follow our passion and desires and pleasure, the more we're going to be taken on this path of our life that's perfect for us and that brings together all of those pieces. Everything begins with self-awareness. Everything begins with dropping into our own bodies and exploring and healing the things from our past, becoming aware and conscious of the ways that we operate habitually in patterns, or the things that are obstacles for us, or the things that get in our way. So we start with self-awareness, and once we have self-awareness and self-connection and self-understanding, then that's the beginning of the conversation. We're in such a period of flux about who we are, where we come from, what our needs are, how do we navigate being in connection with each other, that everything's shifting. And so I think there's always a need for delicacy and compassion for the fact that things are changing, for the fact that we're in this period of growth. I don't know. I just feel like there's always a need for compassion, always a need for sensitivity to the delicateness of our human experience, because we're all delicate human beings who want to be loved and want to be connected. And that puts us in a vulnerable position most of the time, no matter who we are. Now I'm at the place where I'm realizing that women can be as empowered as they want to. We are so much more sovereign. We're so much more empowered. We're so much more in integrity to who we are. We're very aligned with each other. But if we don't have men with us, oh my gosh, if those of us who, especially those of us who are parents of men, who love men, who want to have relationships with men, it's like, wow, we need the men to come along. We need to support our men too. And so I think that's the essence of why right now I'm feeling so called to support men, because there's so much more opportunity for really incredible connections, physically, sexually, sensually, emotionally, spiritually, that we don't have access to because we're disconnected, we're dislocated. More on that coming soon in 2023, definitely where I'm headed with my content. But right now I'm still focusing on communication skills in the more specific realm of speaking. And I have a course coming up starting on Monday. It's going to be a 5-week group. I'm going to keep it pretty small. Training, 1.5 hours per week with one individual coaching session. It is 10:30 to noon Mondays, and it's going to be about speaking skills, telling your story. And, speaking skills are important for content creators. They're important for anyone who wants to be something like an actual speaker, a TED Talk speaker. But they're also important for anyone who has a business or has a job and needs to report to people, or who needs to work in a group. They're also important for anyone who wants to have relationships that are effective with other people, whether it's friendship, or love relationships, or if you want to heal your relationship with your family of origin or your children. How we speak, how we tell our story, how we share what's really true for us is really important. And the speaking skills that we use as actors and as content creators are translatable. They're generalizable to anybody who wants to effectively communicate with a person sitting right in front of them. So often we keep ourselves back, even to the experience of, say sex. I'm talking more and more about sex, even though it kind of scares me a little bit because I don't think it fits specifically into my content, but I do think that it's so much of a motivator for us as human beings that it's important to talk about. So say, for example, in a sexual connection with someone, so many people are afraid to share what's true for them, how they feel in that moment, because they are thinking they should be a certain way. They've been either acculturated by the messages from our society that they should perform in a certain way, or they should look a certain way, or they should sound a certain way. And so often we don't communicate what we want or what we feel. And again, going back to what Louis said earlier, the first step is we have to know who we are and what we want and how we feel. And then once we know what it is, we need to have practice sharing with a person that's sitting right in front of us. Or it doesn't matter whether it's sharing it with the person who's right there in front of us, or whether it's taking a deep breath and sharing it, pushing record and making a video, or whether it's taking a deep breath, connecting with ourselves and walking out onto a stage. The same principles apply. Who are you? What do you want? And how are you going to communicate that to someone else in a way that they can hear? Knowing that when you do that, you're serving your own authentic expression in the world, and you're making a difference for someone who sees and hears you by letting them know that they're not alone and that they have permission to do the same. When we connect with ourselves, know our desire, know who we are, and express what we want, we give permission to other people to do the same. If you want more information about the speaking course that begins on Monday, Lisa Lacroix, LisaLacroix.com/speaking.